All right, so we're less than a week into the new year, and we already got Ethan Klein making a complete fool out of himself. It did not take very long, and I didn't expect it to take very long. Like, even though the guy's on a break from his podcast, he's still got Twitter, and everyone knows he puts out some of the best takes on Twitter, and he's still got Hassan to defend him, even though at this point, I'm sure Hassan's probably just sick of it, and he's like, dude, can I just do my own thing? Like, you don't need to defend me anymore, and I don't want to have to defend your ridiculous tweets. And also, I feel like Ethan's kind of just stealing Hassan's whole shtick and like grift he has going. Like with that podcast that they started, it's basically just the same shit that Hassan does on his live stream. Like, why does Hassan need to do that podcast? It's like, all right, let's talk about Joe Rogan. Let's talk about Tucker Carlson. Let's talk about Steven Crowder. It's like, can we come up with something original to do? Like, there's enough podcasts and shows out there that criticize these people. And I'd imagine people are starting to get sick of the whole self-righteous, social justice warrior, millionaire, white guy who's extremely privileged, talking about how they're the good guy and Joe Rogan's the enemy, Steven Crowder's the enemy, Ben Shapiro's the enemy, and they don't understand your struggle, but we do, and we just want to make the world a better place by taking a ton of money from our fans and talking about how the world's a shitty place. It's like, oh, this country's so fucked up, there's so many things wrong with it, but I'm just going to take a ton of money from these people that have a lot less money than me, and I'm going to buy $1 million houses and drive around in nice cars and be financially stable for the rest of my life. But I'm going to make up for that by just complaining about other rich people on my podcast. All right, so that's enough of that rant. Let's get on to the tweet now and see what Ethan had to say. Joe Rogan, who lives on elk meat, egg yolk, and human growth hormone with lungs full of tar, thinks he's healthier than everyone. This motherfucker is such a bitch that when he got COVID, he threw the kitchen sink at it. If you're so healthy, just write it out like you say a man should. Alright, so this is like one of the best tweets ever, I think. I could probably spend like an hour analyzing all this. I feel like I'm reading something out of a BuzzFeed article, which is kind of the direction that Ethan's taking now. Like, he used to make fun of shit like this, but now he's right on board with them. This sounds like the most generic social justice warrior, left-wing, anti-Joe Rogan tweet ever. I feel like I've seen this exact same tweet like hundreds of times already. When Joe Rogan first got COVID, I feel like everyone was tweeting out shit like this. It kind of seems like Ethan's late to the game, even though I know people are always criticizing Joe Rogan. But this tweet, I mean, hasn't this been said enough? Like, oh, Joe Rogan, he just lives off of elk meat and human growth hormone. The lungs full of tar part, that's kind of original. I don't think I've heard many people say that. But then he talks about how Joe Rogan took all this stuff to fight COVID, and later on he mentions ivermectin. At least he didn't just say horse dewormer. I'm surprised he didn't say that. But then he also talks about how Joe Rogan says people should just be manly and they shouldn't need to take anything to fight off COVID. Like, everyone's heard this a billion times. Like, we get the point. You know what we haven't heard a million times? Someone go on his podcast and say this stuff right to his face. Like, Ethan, there's no chance in hell he would ever say anything like this to him. I bet he wouldn't even stay in the same room with him. Like, if Joe Rogan just looked at him, I bet Ethan would shit his pants. This tweet is just so desperate. And I know he's just doing this for attention, but I feel like people are probably just like, dude, can you just be quiet? Like, this, you're not making yourself look good. I don't think many people actually believe, like, oh, he really got him here. Yeah, he really showed Joe Rogan. Like, I haven't seen many people really defending Ethan here. Most people are just clowning on him. And if they do defend him, it's like the usual suspects, like Hassan or like some other left-wing channel. And it's kind of like just half-assed. It's like, yeah, conservatives are bad, Joe Rogan sucks or whatever. But I think most rational people will understand that this tweet, this is not it. Like, this is not the way to go about like going after Joe Rogan or trying to trigger him. Like, Joe Rogan, he probably won't even see this. If he does, he's just gonna laugh at it. But of course, there are some people that see this tweet and they'll pretend like this is a good tweet or he like really got to Joe Rogan here. Like Def Noodles, of course. In his title of his newest video, he put Ethan Klein destroys Joe Rogan. Ethan Klein destroyed Joe Rogan with that tweet right there. Like, what the hell reality are you living in? Like, that was the most pathetic attempt at anything I've ever seen. Like, explain to me how Joe Rogan was destroyed there. And I'm not here just trying to defend Joe Rogan. Like, I'll criticize Joe Rogan if I don't agree with what he's saying. Like, I think some of his opinions on, like, masks and vaccines, like, they should be criticized a little bit. But this is not the way to go about it. I think it's pretty obvious that with this tweet, it only makes Joe Rogan look better and people that criticize him look worse. Like, at the end of the first paragraph on his tweet, he says, Joe Rogan thinks he's healthier than everyone. Joe Rogan, I'm going to take a good guess, and I'm going to say he's a lot healthier than the average American. And I'm going to take a guess and say he's a lot healthier than Ethan. I think Joe Rogan is objectively healthier than most people, and he's in his mid-50s. Like, if you look like he does in your mid-50s, you're doing something right, and you're probably really healthy. And obviously, just because he's strong and he's like works out all the time, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's healthy. But from what I know, I think Joe Rogan is a pretty healthy dude, and Ethan is definitely unhealthy. And when it comes to any physical activity, I'm sure Joe Rogan can beat Ethan at it. And Joe Rogan just seems healthier physically and mentally. Like, if you look at Ethan on his podcast, like, the guy just looks miserable. Like, he's always hunched over. He's like just laying there, and he just looks like a blob. Like, he just looks so out of shape. And then Joe Rogan, like, he's always upbeat. He's like always paying attention to everything. He just looks really healthy. He seems always like he's having a good time and he's happy. And Ethan admits himself that he's miserable and he's on antidepressants, which there's no problem with being on antidepressants, but he's obviously not very happy. And I'm going to take a good guess and say if he worked out more, he ate healthier, and he got in better shape, he'd just feel a lot better and he'd be less depressed. And I think obesity is just as big of a problem as COVID. Like, obesity, I think, is the second leading cause of preventable death in the United States. Like, it's a massive problem we have here. So it's a pretty bizarre take for somebody who's clearly unhealthy and overweight to be criticizing somebody who's objectively a lot healthier than they are for claiming that they're healthy. I think Joe Rogan is like 15 years older than Ethan, and I'd love to see Ethan try to do any workout that Joe Rogan does. And I think everyone would agree that they'd rather be in the shape that Joe Rogan's in his like 50s than the shape Ethan's in his 30s. He's just in no position to lecture Joe Rogan about being healthy. Like, this dude sits there eating like McDonald's and Pizza Hut and Domino's. Like, on the Frenemies podcast, I remember they'd sit there eating like the worst food ever for you. And also, I think Ethan's about to have Nick Ocado on his podcast. Like, this dude, he's unhealthy for a living. Like, he eats McDonald's like 24/7. It's incredible. And now you're like promoting him. Like, what the hell's going on here? And I don't have a problem that Ethan's having Nick Ocado on, but I don't think you should be really talking about anyone else's health right now when you're about to have this dude on. So also in Ethan's tweet, he also talks about Joe Rogan having lungs of tar, which I don't think I've ever heard anybody say before about Joe Rogan. But I think this is Ethan just projecting, because Ethan has talked about how he smokes cigarettes and how he's pretty much miserable without cigarettes. Like, it's pretty sad what's going on here.
I can't control myself. I have bad impulse control when stuff's around.
Get a vape, dude. It's hard. Live up to the fucking meme.
No, stop everything.
Well, or just stop everything. That's
what
also
do you
good
want?
advice.
I have no joy, a recreational joy in my life. Obviously, I'm not going to say my life is joyless, because it's not. Thank you, Zach. I have no joy in my recreational joy in my life. Do you understand?
Welcome to being an adult.
That's not what being adult is.
Yes, it is.
Having nothing to do, no pleasure.
No, let's
joy.
find you pleasures. There should be a pleasure.
Find me a pleasure, Hila. Find me one thing that I like, besides French fries and cigarettes.
So this is exactly what's going on here. This guy, he's miserable. He hates his life. All he has is fast food and cigarettes, like he said. And so he looks at other people who are happy and healthy and having fun and loving their life, and he tries to bring them down because he's so miserable. Everyone else has to be miserable. Like, you criticize Joe Rogan for having tar lungs, yet you say like one of the only things that brings you joy is cigarettes. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, all Ethan does is try to drag people down. Like, he admits himself that he is miserable. He hates everything. He smokes cigarettes and he takes antidepressants. So he has to speculate on everyone else's life and talk about how everyone else is on drugs and how everyone else is unhealthy and miserable. Like, Logan Paul, he's really successful. He's obviously in really good shape. I'm sure he's pretty healthy. You know, maybe he drinks a little too much, I think he said. But of course, Ethan has to speculate, and he started this like rumor that he's on opiates or something like that. And of course, all of Ethan's fans and his crew members all hear this and just believe it 100%, and they just run with it. And now they're like, oh, this is so sad to hear. Yeah, this guy's in such a dark place, even though there's little evidence to support that. I think Logan just said he was like overwhelmed. Like, Ethan, he's admitted he's like really unhappy. I think he admits that he's unhealthy, and he says he's on antidepressants. So I could actually make this argument against him, and I'd have a lot more facts to support it. All right, so back to the tweet. In the second half, he talks about how Joe Rogan's a bitch because when he got COVID, he threw the kitchen sink at it. And if he was so healthy, he would just ride it out like he says a man should. And from what I know, I don't think Joe Rogan's ever said anything like people should just ride out COVID. Like, if you're a healthy man, you need to just ride it out. Like, you shouldn't take any medication or you shouldn't go to the hospital. I don't think Joe Rogan said anything like that. And also, I'm pretty sure Joe Rogan tells people to get vaccinated. He's not like anti-vax or anything. I think he is a little skeptical of the vaccine. vaccine, like people should be with anything basically. But I think for the most part, he just says, yeah, if you're older, you should take it. I think he does say like if you're younger, you should like think about it a little longer. But I'm pretty sure he tells people that they should get vaccinated. And I know he's not vaccinated himself, but I think he can make his own health decisions, and it's his choice, you know? It's just like how Ethan has the choice to shove fried food down his throat all day long. And also, I guarantee you, if Ethan got COVID and it started to like really affect him and he started to feel like shit from it, I guarantee he'd be taking the same shit that Joe Rogan took. I guarantee everybody, when they actually get COVID, they're probably just like, shit, just give me whatever you gave Donald Trump or Joe Rogan. Like, especially if you're a rich person and you have really good health care, like you just want to beat that thing. So you want to do what works, and you want to do what other rich people are doing to survive. And it's funny because I don't think Joe Rogan like mocks anybody for getting the vaccine. I think he like mocks people who are like forcing other people to get the vaccine, but I don't think he like makes fun of somebody because they got the vaccine. But Ethan's calling Joe Rogan a bitch because he took some medication to help fight off coronavirus. Like, his whole argument here doesn't even make any sense. Like, why is it a bitch move to take that stuff? And Joe Rogan doesn't tell anybody to just like ride out coronavirus. Like, I bet he would say, if you get coronavirus, take what I took. I feel like every time Ethan talks about Joe Rogan or somebody on the right or somebody he just doesn't like, he always has this attitude like, this person's a bully and I need to stick up for everybody and go after him. It's kind of pathetic. And all his fans act like that too. Because right after this, of course, people are posting pictures of like Ethan compared to Joe Rogan. Like, Ethan's got his shirt off and he's like standing there in a diaper, and Joe Rogan's like got a six-pack or whatever, and he's just done working out. So then, of course, all of Ethan's fans and all these like SJW people start talking about how all Joe Rogan's fans are body shaming Ethan. And these people are just so fragile and so sensitive. His fans are just like out of their fucking minds. Like, honestly, this always happens. Like, Ethan calls somebody out or talks about somebody on his podcast, and then that person responds, and then all his fans are like, oh my God, they're bullying Ethan. Poor Ethan, this poor guy. Like, if you think Ethan's the victim of something, you're not living in reality. I'm sorry. Like, you've lost your fucking mind. Ethan does all the same shit that he criticizes other people for. Like, all of his fans are saying that people are body shaming Ethan. Are you telling me he's never body shamed anybody? Like, he does it constantly. He body shames Joe Rogan, Trisha Paytas, and just to start all this trauma, he shames Joe Rogan, like, for what he eats, for what he took to fight COVID. He calls him a motherfucker and a bitch, and then people post pictures comparing the two, and all of a sudden they're the bad guy. Like, this is just amazing what's going on here. Like, let's see how some of his fans are coping with this on his subreddit. This person said, what the actual fuck is happening right now on Twitter? Like, I get Rogan's fanboys are going to shit on Ethan, take everything out of context. His fans always say this. They always like, oh, you're taking stuff out of context. Like, dude, Ethan's whole podcast is taking shit out of context. And what's the context here? Like, that tweet was one of the dumbest things ever. Just take the L and move on. So then this person says, but how am I having this much trouble finding like one person on there who has common sense? One blue check mark calling out this insane behavior. Like, what the fuck is happening? Guess what? Because Ethan's a fucking idiot and nobody wants to defend him. He doesn't have the best take on everything. Like, the dude has, most of his takes are just terrible. Like, he sounds like an idiot with most of the shit that he says, but he has so many followers and so many subscribers, people just deal with it. But now I just think people are done with him. Like, why do people want to defend this kind of behavior? Like, this is a dumb tweet he put out and people are making fun of him for it. That's what happens on the internet. That's exactly what Ethan does. Like, this is how shit works. Like, whenever shit backfires on him, they're all like, what's going on here? Like, you can't body shame people. Like, there's a comment right under this post where somebody said, I had to stop reading the tweets under Ethan's name on trending because they were all so disturbing. Straight body shaming. People are straight body shaming on him. Wow. How could somebody do something like that? Making fun of his depression and antidepressants, wishing him COVID death, saying horrible things about Eula, and the anti-Semitism. And it's funny because Ethan's done pretty much all the stuff that they just listed. Like, straight body shaming. Of course, Ethan's body shamed. Jesus Christ. Making fun of depression. Yeah, of course, he's done that. Making fun of people for taking antidepressants. Yep, he's done that. Wishing people COVID death. I know he's made fun of people for dying of COVID, so that's close enough. Saying horrible things about Eula. Maybe one day, you know. But I'm sure he's made fun of somebody's wife or something like that. Like, that's what this dude does for a living. Like, whenever people start making fun of Ethan, it's like, oh, you're out of line. Like, that's all Ethan does. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's funny because only a couple posts below this one, people are body shaming Joe Rogan. Like, that's how it is. Like, and everyone body shames Trisha Paytas. Like, his fans are ruthless to her. And here's another post on Twitter of some whacked out H3 fan trying to get like Keemstar banned or something, and they tweeted at like Twitter support. They said Keem has been targeting H3 Productions aggressively for months on all social media platforms. Wow, that sounds kind of familiar. He's a jealous, deplorable human using his platform to hurt others. What? They're like literally talking about Ethan right here. Like, Jesus, these people are coping hard. Like, I guess it's not easy to see your cult leader being criticized. And then here's another funny tweet I saw under, I think, Ethan's tweet. Somebody said, "You fell off." And then someone commented on him saying, "The H3 brother, that H3 stoner, at H3 stoner." Oh my God, that's the Twitter account here. 20 mil in the bank, plus multiple homes, plus 2 successful companies, plus wife hotter than Shakira. How's that falling off? What is going on here? Like, obviously the "you fell off" tweet, like, that gets kind of old, like people just tweeting that, like, ratio, you fell off, shit like that. But then responding to it with like, "Oh no, this guy's got a bunch of money and he's got houses and a wife hotter than Shakira." Oh God, like Hila, she's not terrible looking, but like I think it's kind of hilarious comparing her to Shakira. And I think H3 fans will probably get offended by that. They'll be like, "Oh, you can't make fun of Hila's appearance. That means you're a misogynist." Even though Ethan does that all the time. Like, he's made fun of so many people's appearances. Like, he does it with Trisha Paytas like at least once a week. And also back to that tweet, just because you have money and houses doesn't mean that you're not falling off. Like, Ethan is clearly on the decline right now, especially coming off of Frenemies, because that was such a big hit. Like, he's only going downhill from here probably, especially the fact that he jumped right into a political podcast where I'm sure most of his audience doesn't want to hear it. Like, I'm sure most of his audience doesn't want to see these tweets either, because they don't want to be like, "Oh, I have to go defend this now." And then like some of them are just coping way too hard. Like the people on his subreddit, like these people don't know what to do anymore. Like, guess what? Ethan's a fucking idiot. You just got to accept that. It turns out he was right when 4 or 5 years ago, he said a person that wears like 100 shirts to the grocery store shouldn't be giving people political opinions. It's the downfall of so many. Like, we're seeing it with Seth Rogen too. Like, that dude's just completely exposed himself and people look at him like just a fucking idiot now. So I just want to bring up one more point, because I think with this tweet of Ethan's, he's trying to say like Joe Rogan spreads COVID misinformation, which like I'd agree Joe Rogan doesn't have the best take on COVID, but also like a lot of people just misrepresent what he's trying to say, obviously, and nobody has the best take on COVID. Like, I think pretty much everyone's like a hypocrite when it comes to it, and a lot of people don't really know what they're talking about. Like, especially early on, like everyone was giving COVID misinformation. Like Dr. Fauci, I'm pretty sure, told people not to wear masks. And also mid-2020, Ethan put out this genius tweet. I don't know how he can come up with this shit. He's just so fucking smart. He said protests did not increase COVID, with like the clapping hands, I think that is. Like, how is this a real tweet? Like, wouldn't this be considered COVID misinformation? Like, saying that protests did not increase COVID, because they obviously did. Like, any person with a fucking brain would say that they would increase COVID, and that probably saying that they don't increase COVID would probably get more people to go out to protest, which obviously is what he's trying to do, but that means people are going to spread COVID more. Like, I'd say that this tweet probably contributes to people spreading COVID. All right, so I think that's about it for this video. Make sure you hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think about all this, and then hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.